So in this video, let's think about the SAT math function problem. And the question is, in the xy plane, the graph of function f as a x-intercept at -3, -1, 1. And which of the following defines the function f? And there are some choices for our answers. Before we think about this question, let's think about in terms of solutions of our equation. At first, we need to think about in terms of a basic idea about what is x-intercept. The reason is because they mention about the x-intercept, and that is a actual function information that they gave us. And also we need to think about in terms of form of our function with given information, which will go into our x-intercept. At first, let's think about in terms of this question at first. So let's think about what it is to be the x-intercept. For the x-intercept, it is in the function. The x-intercept is a case when the x value exists. I will just put into x because we don't know exact value of it. So if you write it down again, x exists, but the y value is equal to 0. And that is a case where we call it into x-intercept. And in this case, the x-intercept, the -3, -1, 1, which these are x values when the y value is equal to 0. Which means if you write in coordinate, it will go into be -3, 0, -1, 0, and then we have 1, 0. And we can think about using this x-intercept information. We can think about in this way. Usually when we think about in terms of y, we write it as f of x, and this is just another way of writing y. And f of x is equal to -3, 0, and then -1, 0, and it also passes through 1, 0, and we can think about in this way. The y values are all 0, which means the output of our function are all 0. So we can put this as 0, and 0 is equal to probably x. I'll write this same thing down. This is x value, -3, and then plus something. This is the way how we usually derive a function. -1 is the x value, so -1 and then plus something. And then 1 is the x value, so we write 1 plus something. And we always start in this form when it comes to solving for a function problem. Now we can think about it in this way. This term, beside this term, there's multiple sign. This term times this term times this term is equal to 0, which means we can think about that this term should be equal to 0. This term should be equal to 0, or this term should be equal to 0. So -3 plus something is equal to 0. -3 plus something is equal to, I will just call it x, is equal to 0. All you have to do in order to find the x value is add 3 to the both sides. We get x is equal to +3. So we got that x is +3. We can just write it down. In order to add something to get 0 is to add 1 to get -1 plus 1 makes 0. 1 plus something is equal to 0. Well, it's the same thing with this one, which means we can just write -1. And we can also erase plus sign too. So our full sign here, but this is only, we got the case, but for the x value, the next thing that we want to figure out is we replace every numbers that are formed by the x terms into the x value, which will going to be. Also for this 0, we replace it in f of x to make it real form. So f of x is equal to, instead of -3, we write x, we get +3. And then times, instead of -1, we write x, we get +1. Times, instead of 1, we replace x, we get x minus 1. And this is equal to f of x. So, these are x values. When you input the value x value, we always need to try to input to the every x values that we have. And then we will gonna get an output of our function, which will going to be our y value. Now we can think about in this way that we just found a function, and we can think about our answer for this question. But we can see that this question, this function is not, so it is not a quadratic function, or it is either not linear function. The reason is because for a quadratic, it is a thing that contains a square inside a function. But if you think about this term, if you multiply three things together, it will going to be third power. Also for a linear, there should be first power. But also, if you multiply three of them, we will get third power, not one power. So it will going to be either quadratic or linear, which means it is also either not a, if you draw a quadratic, it will going to be a parabola, but it won't also going to be linear. If you graph, it will going to be a straight line. So we can see that these cases are not the case where if we graph this function, we will get. So for the answer to this question, we can clearly think about a straight answer for f of x is equal to x plus 3 times x plus 1 times x minus 1, which is exactly our A. So we can see that our answer for this question will going to be A. So we talked about how to solve for this question. And before we think about this quadratic linear, let's think about in terms of a straight graph of this function. F of x is equal to x minus 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 1. So let's think about in terms of graph of our function. F of x is equal to x minus 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 1. So we know a lot of points, negative 3 comma negative 1 comma 1, which is simply negative 3 comma 0, because it is a y-intercept, which means the y value is equal to 0 and the x value is negative 3. We also have negative 1 comma 0, which means the x value is negative 1 and the y value is equal to 0. We have one more point, 1 comma 0, which means the y value is also 0 and the x value is this. This is what the x-intercept means. So we know this point, we can actually graph that negative 3 comma 0 and then negative 1 comma 0 and then 1 comma 0. Let's think about our points to graph. Let's think about when the x value is equal to 2. When the x value is equal to 2, we replace x value as 2, which will going to be 2 minus 3 times 2 minus 1 times 2 plus 1. This term will going to be negative 1. This term will going to be positive 1. This term will going to be positive 3. If you multiply all of them, we will get negative 1 times 1 is negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. So when you input the value of 2, we will gonna get negative 3. So 2 comma negative 3. And let's think about other points to graph. So let's think about when the x value is equal to 3. When the x value is equal to 3, even though there are x minus 1, for the 3 minus 1 is 2, this term won't be able to be 0. But this term, 3 minus 3, will going to be 0, which means we multiply all of them, we will also get 0. So it will going to be 3 comma 0, 2. So let's think about the point when the x value is negative 2. When the x value is negative 2, we're going to be negative 2 minus 3 times negative 2 minus 1 times negative 2 plus 1. And negative 2 minus 3 will going to be negative 5. And then times negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. And negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. And this term will going to be positive 15 times negative 1, which will turn into negative 15. So we can actually input the value negative 2. The x value is negative 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, There will be some error right over here, but we'll just think about this term as 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 20, 12, 14, and then 16, which will going to be right over here. But there's -2, which means we need to go left side by -2. So if we actually graph it, let's think about when the x value is 0, so we actually figure out what that will going to be. So when the x value is equal to 0, if we raise this limit, and the thing that we are doing is to find some points to graph this actual graph, because we know that it won't be able to be a parabola or a line, since we knew that it is not a quadratic or a linear. So if it's 0, it will going to be 0 minus 3 times 0 minus 1 times 0 plus 1, and then 0 minus 3 will going to be -3, 0 minus 1 will turn to -1, 0 plus 1 will turn to 1, negative, if you multiply it will turn into positive, 3 times 1 is 3, times 1 will just going to be 3. So in this case, it is different with the x-intercept, which means the y value exists, which in this case will going to be 3, but the x value is equal to 0. This is a case when we call it a y-intercept. So it will going to be 1, 2, 3 right over here. So we can actually look at our kind of a form of graph that passes through all of these points. So you will going to be something that look like this, that passes through all the points satisfy this function. F of x is equal to x minus 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 1, and it keeps going, which means it has the same pattern.